PMH Atwater, researcher, author of Beyond the Light, in which our special guest tonight, Mellen Thomas Benedict's advanced skills are discussed, once said, "The near-death experience of Mellen Thomas is the only one I have yet come across where an individual willfully changed the episode scenario as it was actually happening. What impresses me the most about Mellen Thomas is that he dedicated many years not only to understanding the phenomenon after effects, but to controlling and training his newly expended psychic faculties." Tonight, our special guest on Coast to Coast will be Mellen Thomas Benedict. I'll simply call him Mellen. In 1982, Mellen Thomas Benedict died of terminal brain cancer, survived to tell about it. While in hospice care, Mellen died or was without vital signs for at least an hour and a half before he returned to his body. He's the most studied near-deather in the world. He has taken part in more research and think tanks than any other near-deather. Since his near-death experience, Mellen has devoted himself to scientific research projects. Deepak Chopra has called Mellen Thomas the encyclopedia of the afterlife in his latest book, Life After Death. PMH Atwater, as I just mentioned, researcher and author of Beyond the Light, wrote, "The near-death experience of Mellen Thomas is the only one I have yet come across where an individual willfully changed his episode scenario as it was actually happening." Dr. Kenneth Ring, the author of Heading Toward Omega, says the Omega Project, Mellen's story is one of the most remarkable I've encountered in extensive research on near-death experiences. Mellen Thomas has the big picture, and he's our guest tonight on Coast to Coast. Mellen, welcome to the program.
Well, hello, good evening, and thanks for having me on the show.
What a remarkable story. I've read many, I've seen many. This one has got to be one of the best.
Well, thanks. Didn't seem like it at the time, though.
And welcome back to life.
Actually, it's very good to be back.
You know, so many people talk about being on the other side, and they don't want to come back. Mellen, you just said something pretty interesting. It's good to be back. How come?
Well, one of the things I learned when I was on the other side is how sacred the body is. The biology of your body is absolutely sacred and a fundamental part of our evolution and our being. I know many religions and many philosophies have told us that the body is just a machine, it's just a vehicle, it's just an empty cup with a spirit in it. But it's much more than that. And what I learned on the other side is that the other side's not all it's cracked up to be. And forgive me for saying that, but it's really better to be here than there. It really is.
Does that mean that when our time comes, we don't want that to happen?
No. It's a part of a natural process. It's just that when you drop your what we call our physical body, which is just your heavy, dense body, you enter into a quantum state. And I learned a lot about quantum physics on the other side, having never studied it before I died. And when you're in a quantum state, you're out of time and space as we know it, so you are wherever you think you are. There's really no continuum. And so what I learned, one of the beautiful things that I learned is that a body without spirit is lost, and spirit without a body is lost. And the two together form that beautiful thing called heaven on earth.
I want you to tell us, beyond just what I read about your 1982 experience, tell us what was leading up to it, what happened, what kind of cancer did you have, and then let's get into some of these things. Because this story, I'm just so glad you're on, Mellen, to share this with us. And, you know, maybe you can bring some hope to people later on when we open up the phone lines in our third hour with you. But what happened to you with this terminal cancer?
Well, in 1981, mid-1981, I was having a series of nausea, losing my energy, and then a series of blackouts, which is what really got my attention. And one blackout happened while I was driving a car. Thank God a friend was in the car with me in the front seat and pulled the car over and stopped it. And it was after that I thought maybe I should go see a doctor. So I ended up seeing a series of doctors and ended up in a neurologist's office where they did a bunch of tests. And then I was scheduled for more tests, you know how they do, and I was given scans and all that. And the conclusion of it was I was in the doctor's office, and he came in with his assistant, and I was quite the wisecracker. And when he came into the room, I said, "Well, Doc, am I going to live?" And the look on his face said it all.
Yeah.
He didn't even have to say a word. And it's like, and there are probably people out there listening that have been pronounced terminal or have known people that are pronounced terminal. And when they tell you this, it's really almost ununderstandable kind of a thing that happens to you. I remember as he kept talking, his voice faded away, and I sort of floated up to the corner of the room. I was like looking down on him.
Were you in shock?
Yes, I would say. And it's a kind of shock where it's disbelief, yet there it is, and you've got a doctor telling you this. And, of course, I was not very well prepared for this sort of thing at all at that time. And
who really is, Mellen?
Yeah, I guess, because it just came on all of a sudden, and here you have an expert telling you you've got 6 to 8 months to live. And it was just astounding. I didn't handle it very well, actually. The doctor wanted to immediately start chemo and radiation, and but when he left the room, the other doctor sat down with me and he said, "Listen, there's nothing we can do. It's inoperable. It's incurable." He said, "Just between you and me, radiation and chemo will actually shorten your life. You'll be a vegetable."
Oh my God!
By the time they finish with you. And I said, "What do I do? What do I do?" And he said, "Just go make your peace with the world. Go home, go make your peace with the world, and
take care of your business affairs and do what you do,
and make preparations to die."
Yeah.
And well, I tell you, I got in my car to go home with a friend, and by the time I got home, I was so angry, I was raging. It just made me so angry, the whole situation. And I was unprepared for this in many ways, although I had been raised for a good number of my early years in a Catholic boarding school. And forgive me for saying this, but I think Catholic boarding schools create a lot of atheists. And by the time I got out of Catholic boarding school, I was not interested in spirituality. I was not interested in God or anything like that. I wasn't even an atheist. At least atheists show some interest. I never showed any interest in spirituality from that moment on until my near-death experience. And I was very, very angry. I just got very angry, and my friend dropped me off at the house. And I remember going into the house and going into the kitchen and just flew into a rage. I mean, I tipping over the table, knocking stuff on the floor. I was cursing everybody.
Oh, my God.
And not even being an atheist, I was actually cursing God, too. I was swearing at God for making a world like this.
You had lost it, basically, didn't you?
And I remember I had a dog, a trusty, faithful dog, who tried to come up and comfort me, and I yelled at the dog. And I saw the fear in its face, and I went to the screen. I went to the kitchen door and opened the door and literally ripped the door off the hinges. And at that moment, I had a blackout and passed out. And when I woke up on the floor, my dog was right next to me, loyal.
Yeah.
And that began my path of being completely clueless, having no real spiritual background and no knowledge of these things. And the thought, the doctor said, "Why don't you go home to your family?" But the thought at that time to me, that would be worse. The worst thing that could happen was to go home and die at my parents' house. I believed my parents didn't love me at the time. I believed that I had a dysfunctional family, but I now see that I had only the average American dysfunctional family. Looking back on,
oh, there's some worse, I'm sure.
Oh my God, yes. But you can't judge your pain to anyone else's. Your pain is your pain. And so to me, the thought of going home and dying at my parents' house was, that was not an option.
No, unacceptable to you, wasn't it?
And so I was kind of lost for several weeks, really not knowing what to do. I was a self-employed artist with no medical insurance, and I did try to go to public health for a second opinion, and all they did was show me the tests that had already been taken and agree with it. So no new tests were needed, and basically fell through the cracks of the medical system. I literally drove up to, this happened in North Carolina, I literally drove up to Duke University, which is supposed to be one of the great, hospitals. I drove up, walked into the cancer center, signed in, And when they called my name, they wanted me to fill out the forms for insurance and all that. And I said, well, I'm terminal. I don't have any insurance. And they didn't know what to do. But literally, they in a few minutes, escorted me through a couple of rooms back to a doctor at administrator's office. And he kind of gave me a lecture on, you're not supposed to be here, go to public health. And,
oh, my God.
We can't help you, basically.
That's medicine for you, right?
Well, I really, I'm really not that down on medicine.
Well, you know what? Maybe that's not fair because most medicine is good.
But so many fall through the cracks, and I was one of them. I fell completely through the cracks, and but within about 3 weeks, a friend of mine introduced me to a friend of hers, and that was when the first time I told anybody in my circle that I was terminal. And spent the afternoon with these two ladies, and crying and all that sort of thing. And the new friend I just met said, "Do you know about hospice?" And I said, "Never heard of it. What is it?" And she kind of explained what hospice was. And within 2 days, she offered to sit me up in a private hospice situation and be with me. This was like an angel. And I ended up basically telling my friends and my family that I was relocating my studio to this other town, and basically I was just moving. I didn't tell anybody I was dying. And so I ended up in a private hospice situation, well cared for, and was withering away pretty good. But I wasn't a happy camper. I wasn't, the greatest person to be in hospice. I was very, very angry about everything. And as it turns out, my caretaker, Angel, I call her, was a bit too religious for me.
Do you think, Mellen, that this attitude, and I can understand the way you felt when you were told you had terminal cancer, but I'm beginning to have a feeling that you must have had a pretty negative attitude from the get-go, even before you found out about this. And I'm wondering if that contributed to anything.
Well, I actually didn't know until I had my life review. It was in my life review that suddenly everything became clear to me. And what happened was, one morning, I felt this blast of light coming in the window. I woke up for a split second, then fell back to sleep. And the next thing I know, I was outside of my body looking at my body. And there was a light leaving my body, and I just sort of said I must be dead. That was what I thought to myself. I tried to wake up my hospice caretaker who was down the hall, but of course, not having a body, that I couldn't.
Was this the moment you did die?
I believe so.
Okay.
It was in February of 1982, and the minute I realized I couldn't wake up my caretaker, I ended up back in the room that that my body was in, and suddenly darkness closed in all around me. And I tell you, that was the scariest feeling in the world. It felt like hell. You
didn't see any demons coming to get you or anything like that?
No, I fell into a deep, dark hole, as it were, almost like a black hole. And it seemed like there were many others in this same hole with me. Mm-hmm. Suffering in their own way.
Who may have died pretty close to the same time period you did.
Yeah, possibly. And but I remember I saw a pin light of light. It was almost like a little star in the blackness, but it was so far away. But almost immediately, my life review began. And my life review for me began as almost like a holographic movie in this darkness all around me.
Is there anybody there, like an instructor, or this just happens?
No, this was just, it was like a replay of my whole life from the minute I died all the way back into my mother's belly.
Oh, my. All right.
I learned things about when my mother was pregnant that she had never told me, which I talked to her, years later. But what I learned almost immediately was, and started seeing, because the life review is a very important natural phase of both living and dying. It's a very important thing, this life review that goes on with people that die. And Mine started the second of my death and repeated backwards, and I got to see in my life review why I had gotten sick. And why I had gotten sick is that it started in the womb, prenatally. My father, my biological father, who's now dead. My mother's also dead now, but my biological father was beating my mother when she was carrying me.
Oh my!
And he was a bit of an alcoholic, and when he was punching her, I was inside her belly, and I was hearing the thunder. I was feeling her pain because I was wired to her nervous system. And every time he hit her, I felt her pain, I felt her depression, I felt her fear. And these things may affect different people different ways, but it pissed me off. And so I realized that I was born pissed off from the get-go. And that led to a life of being a joker at the parties, but really never really trusting people and never really getting close to people. And I never understood this till I had my life review. And in my life review, I saw that there was a moment in which I gave myself brain cancer. And that was I was a product of the Cold War. A lot of people don't even remember the Cold War, but it was pretty intense.
Sure.
And I was, as children, we were being shown films of, duck and cover and nuclear weapons at school, and that cockroaches would be the only thing left. So all that was in my head. And then by the time I was in my 20s, the ecology thing was happening, and they were all saying, we're going to blow up the world 500 times, we're going to overpopulate, we're going to overgraze, the world has no way out. And they were saying that back in the the late 60s and 70s.
So this was eating away at you for a very long time.
And then the pivotal moment, which I saw in my life review, was this ecology group put out this photo that's quite famous. And it was an aerial photograph of Los Angeles compared to a microscope picture of a cancer cell, and they looked very similar.
That's interesting.
And some people say it's the straw that broke the camel's back. In my case, it was the photograph that broke me, and I didn't even realize it. But the minute I saw that photograph, I had the thought in my head that nature had gone wrong and created a cancer called humanity, and humanity was a cancer on the planet that was going to kill this planet. And I lived with that thought, that belief in my head from that moment on. And guess what?
You created it.
I'm a human.
Yeah.
I created brain cancer. So, your world belief, how you see the world, the lens you look through, can be devastating or rejuvenating.
We're going to get into some of these astounding things you have learned ever since this. Prophecy, our future, reincarnation, soulmates, and a belief system. We're going to go to a break very soon here, Mellen, but you got to tell us how you came back and how long you think you might have been away.
Well, I had a living will at the time, and we had good instruments, amplified stethoscopes, and all that. And I literally wanted to die at that time, and I wanted to be sure I was dead. I didn't want to be put on machines. So I had a living will, and literally I had been asked, I originally asked to be left alone for 3 days, but they don't do that. And but I wanted to make sure that I was dead, so they were going to wait at least 3 hours or more. And but my caretaker said she measured my vital. By the time she found me, I was already getting stiff because I died in the morning, and people really didn't come into my room until around 10 a.m.
Oh, my gosh.
So I was already had signs. And I don't know if you've ever been with someone who's dead.
No. I never have, really.
But you know, I was with my mother when she died, and the minute they die, you know it. They're not unconscious. It's a completely different experience. And so at about that time, they started measuring my vital signs, and there were no vital signs for an hour and a half, at which time they gave up.
You were gone.
As far as they were concerned, I was gone.
Okay, and while you were gone, these things that you just mentioned, the review and everything, this is going on at that moment?
Oh, yes, that and much more.
Mellen, stay with us. We'll be back with you on Coast to Coast AM. In Roswell, they had like 100 chairs outside of a window when we were broadcasting Friday night. And, each half hour they'd bring in another 100 people who wanted to watch the show. And each time when we had a new group there, I would go out and say, there's a check for $1 million under chair 8. And you wouldn't believe how people would scatter around. I really feel sorry for the guy who was sitting in chair 8. And welcome back to Coast, we're with Mellen Thomas Benedict. He is perhaps one of the most studied near-deather around. And, gosh, we're so glad you came back, Mellen.
Oh, thanks.
Okay, so as this evolution now, you have passed away. They've kept your body out there for 3 to 5, 6 hours. Why did you not want them to touch you after your death?
Well, it wasn't so much to touch me. It's just that I wanted them to be absolutely sure I was dead, that there would be no chance that I'd be taken to a hospital and plugged up to machines or try to be resuscitated in any way.
Okay. So now during this process, you're going through this incredible journey. But earlier you said, you know what, dying is not all that it's made out to be. Tell me what you meant by that.
Well, the other side and the other realms are very interesting, but you're in a quantum state experience, and in that there's no time, there's no space as we know it, and literally, if you don't watch it, 100 years could go by. But what's interesting is that what I learned and what I believe to this day is that the physical body that we live in actually gives us the most beautiful vehicle ever imagined to experience time and space and to experience the universe in ways that cannot be experienced while you're in spirit. It's great to have organs, believe me. When you're on the other side, you don't have organs. And there may be people here that think they're in pain, that are in pain, that think their life is not anything like they wanted.
Right.
But I tell you, I have met people that would give you anything for the worst day of your life, because even the worst day of your life is so filled with potential.
And live it to its fullest.
Yes.
You have said something that I've never heard anybody else say, and that is what's on the other side of a black hole. Fascinating what you write about on that. Black holes are very interesting. I was back in the early 80s, right after my near-death experience. I was trying to explain to people the things that I'd seen, and I have always, and to this day, been interested in astronomy. And I was telling people back in the 80s that there were black holes in the center of every galaxy. In fact, that's what forms galaxies, are black holes. And literally, from what I saw on the other side, black holes don't take you to, quote, another dimension or another universe. They take you to a singularity point, and they are the great processors of universal material in this universe that we live in. They're the total recycle machine, if you can imagine that. In essence, we're on the other side.
Exactly.
That's incredible. I wonder what Stephen Hawking would say about this, huh?
I predicted many things before Hawking did, although, he was a very great man, and I love his work, but I was predicting that there was more than one Big Bang, and I predicted 8 astronomical discoveries 20 years before they were discovered. And thank God I did lectures about them and documented it so that I can prove what I'm saying. But I was not a scientist or an astronomer or a physicist, but I had seen things that I could report on, and they've turned out to be very accurate so far.
We're going to get into a lot of these next hour as well. Were you frightened at all on the other side to the point where you never want to go back again? Is there anything out there like that?
Not for me. Once I got out of what I call the hell hole or the black hole I was stuck in, and did make my way to the light, it was an amazing experience because something very similar to a guardian angel actually appeared to me as I called out, and I was calling out desperately for help. And I realize now that this was the metaphor for my own higher self was reaching out to me, and the only thing I could relate to something like that at the time was an angel because of my upbringing. And it was an angel who brought me to the light. But as I went to the light, and some people report on tunnels and things like that, mine was, I guess you could call it a tunnel in a way, but it was this rainbow shimmering light, and the light was both going. The light or the quote, tunnel was part of it was going to the light, and the other part of it was coming from the light. And as I was moving up, I sort of realized that the column of light going up was all the people that were dying at that time, and the other side of the same light, actually, it was the same light beam, so to speak. I was moving up a light beam, so to speak. On the other side was all the souls coming in, being born. And I realized I was on the wrong train.
Was there an equal balance there?
I don't think it has to be that way. That kind of equilibrium, but I learned this about light on the other side, is that light has many more facilities to it than we've even discovered at this time. On a light beam, you can both send and receive. Isn't that interesting? And only in modern physics are they kind of getting that with lasers.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
The journey that you took has obviously gotten the attention of a lot of researchers. What are they looking for with you, Mellen?
Well, before I had my experience, I knew I'd never heard the word near death. I'd never heard the word hospice. I don't think I'd ever heard the word metaphysics, actually. And I was not really a student of world religions, although right before I died, I did look at a book of world religions, but it didn't seem to make a lot of sense to me. But basically, repeat that question again.
Well, these researchers now who want to study you, they want to grab you. What are they looking for?
Well, I was pretty clueless, and it was Phyllis Atwater who kind of discovered me in the backwaters, and I was very fascinated by a lecture that she gave. And after the lecture, I went up to her and I said, I think I've had one of those, and we sat down and talked and have been friends ever since. She introduced me to people like Ken Ring, and in talking with them, we found out things that were going on that they thought were very interesting and unique. One of which is I thought everybody was doing this. Of course, I really didn't think about it very deeply at the time, but from almost right after my experience, I'd say within a couple of months after my experience, the light would just come and get me and take me out of my body. And every time that happened, I thought I was dying again, and it was a little scary.
Oh, that's a jarring feeling, yeah.
And so I would go to the light again, and the light and I would have more conversations, and I sort of had this desire with the light that I wanted to bring something back tangible from the light, and so I was always given an idea or an invention to bring back. Every exchange I've ever had with the light, I get something practical to bring back. And so it took about a year or so where I got comfortable with these experiences and just would let it happen. And Phyllis Atwater and Ken Ring were the first to tell me that, Mellen, nobody else does this. I said, well, I go back to the light every day.
What kind of ideas do you come back with, or inventions?
Inventions, practical applications of things. I didn't want to be a philosopher. I'm not a philosopher. I believe, a campfire and two humans, and you've got philosophy. I wanted to do. I thought if this is this is all for real, there must be something tangible I can bring back and bring into this world that's going to help the world.
Well, like you need to come back with like the formula to turn liquid water into hydrogen, for example.
Well, I've spent many years in research, and I was warned on the other side because I had quite a bit of time on the other side because you are out of time, but it seemed like I had forever. I was at one point I was told that I would from now on have contact of universal intelligence, and that I could answer any question, and I've been tested in double-blind university experiments on this, on being able to give answers about something I should know nothing about whatsoever. But I go to the light and I get answers. But I was warned before I came back. The light said, when you go back, don't be surprised. Even if you or anyone else could answer any question, don't be surprised if that's not the point. And I said, what do you mean? And they said, well, at this time in history, humans are much more interested in the questions than the answers. And that turned out to be my experience over many years. I would work on these great experiments in these think tanks. We would come up with all these great ideas and formulas, and I would draw schematics. I would get frequencies down to the decimals, and quite often the devices were never built, or if they were never really pursued. And I went through time after time, in which at one point I felt like I'm the golden goose here, but nobody's doing anything with the information. I've done some great work, and no one ever followed up on it. And of course, at that time, I did not know how to raise money for research or put a research project together.
Do you find that organizations are interested in this now, or do they just still seem to shy away?
Well, I think groups have always been interested in this. You'd be surprised at some of the Fortune 500 companies that use psychics and channelers and things like that. I had proven myself to have a certain skill to get specific information. And over a period of time in think tanks, we discovered, at least with me, that yes, I could get valuable information, but the formulation of the question was so important to the answer you got back.
Give me an example, if you could.
Well, one project I did that got a lot of attention was at the University of Texas, where I was brought in to look into, quote, a medical thing, and because I don't work on weapon systems, and I didn't work on just making people richer than they are. So I was told it would be a medical project, and I was never, in those days, I was never given any other information. I was to come in blind and just see what we could find out through this technique I developed to get answers from the light. And so I show up in Texas, and this is quite well documented and videotaped. And we sit down with the scientists and the doctors, and I do my little technique to go to the light.
Yeah.
They then tell me that we're going to look into CMT, and I said, what is that? And it's Charcot-Marie tooth disease, which is, I said, what's that? And it turns out to be a form of MS, and the Charcot-Marie tooth were the doctors who discovered it back in 1907 or something.
Huh.
And so I've developed this technique where I can be, even in delta brainwaves, keep my eyes open, talk to you. And my tools were these big Crayola crayons on a pad, because I would draw pictures of what I was seeing. So I went to the light, and in a very short session on the first day, I went to the light, and I said, help me with the answer for this CMT. And I started drawing. I drew a little small horseshoe at the top and a big horseshoe at the bottom, which I found out was the chromosomes. And in the top horseshoe, I said it's number 1, number 6, and number 17, something like that. And I said, this is the problem. And by the way, this one gene here has a double head. One is normal, one is not, and we need to find out how to cleave off the head that's not. And in some fashion, and that information was given to Baylor University, and within about 3 months after the experiment, I started getting all these calls and nice letters from the University of Texas saying I'd hit it right on the money.
Dr. Kenneth Ring writes that you have a vision of the future, and you see it as a bright future, a hopeful future. We don't hear that, Mellen, from a lot of people.
I know, and I tell you, I was, I guess, someone who had a very dark vision of the future before my experience. But basically, what I learned was that creation has just begun, that we've just begun our journey. And the future is so bright for humanity. And I know people can't see that now because it's been a long, hard path coming up the evolutionary chain and coming up through evolution and civilization, building civilization as we've known it. But I was shown that human beings are one of the most graceful things ever on this planet, believe it or not. It's just that we don't have a very good self-image right now. We're like children who don't have a good self-image. And there are things going on the planet right outside your window that would astound you if you could see it.
I wish we could.
Well, insects are always preying on each other. If you looked at time-lapse photography of plants, they're always fighting for space, light, water.
It's the planet, isn't it?
There's war going on outside your window every day. And to this day, check the World Health Organization. To this day, the biggest killer of mankind, more than all of mankind's wars all put together, is still the mosquito. It's on the cover of National Geographic.
There's no question about that. I don't like the mosquito.
And in the animal, insect, bacterial world, it's eat or be eaten. In the human world, we have just begun concepts of charity. The concept of retirement. It's an amazing concept.
Well, the mission you took and the course you took, I don't wish everyone to have to go through to get the kind of data that you have come back with. Are you convinced, even though you see a bright future, that there's still evil out there outside that plane of existence, that there's, that the devil really exists? Is it there?
I tell you, that's a very simple metaphor for something a little more complex that's going on in all the universe. I mean, stars feed and destroy each other. There's a certain give and take in the universe. I tell you, at one point when I was with the light, I asked the light, I said, why are humans so dark and doomed? And at that moment, the light turned into this mandala. Do you know what those are?
No, tell me.
Well, a mandala is like this circular drawing.
Okay.
That you may see from India or whatever.
Okay.
Yeah. And this mandala was alive, and it was like opening like a lotus to me. And I was given a glimpse into every human soul. I was given a glimpse. This mandala of human souls opened up to me.
And how black are those souls?
I
or
was
how much
taken
light?
into this, and there was no blackness at all. There was no evil whatsoever. And at that moment, I fell in love with humanity.
Yet we can't deny that evil exists, Mellen.
It's your perception of evil, and there's always much more good going on than evil. It's just that our media, it's just that we're still coming out of survival. We haven't transcended survival yet, so we're constantly on the lookout for what we call evil. There are more good people in the world than bad people.
I would agree with that.
There's more goodwill in the world than bad will.
Then why can't goodwill then overcome bad?
It will. The meek shall inherit the earth. And just not too long ago, I was in an elevator, and a woman got on with this T-shirt that said, "The meek are getting ready."
I was going to say, but when?
Oh, it's kind of an interesting metaphor. You can't put an actual time on this. That would be impossible to do. But I can tell you, it's so close now. It's in the blinking of a cosmic eye.
It's close because you know this. You've been told this.
Yes, and I got to see what's called the mass potential of humanity, and the mass potential of humanity is looking into the heart of humans. And there's goodness in every human heart there ever has been.
I want to steer everybody to your website, Mellen. It's linked, of course, at coasttocoastam.com. Those of you who aren't at a computer right now, I'll spell it for you. It's Mellen, MELLEN -Thomas.com. And you will find it quite fascinating. Incredible information. I'm looking forward to next hour with you as we get into some of prophecy, your glimpse of the future, reincarnation, your views on even Earth changes. I find to be pretty astounding and dramatic.
Okay.
And so you get ready for that. Now, do you still do you go to conferences and things like that?
Yeah, not as much as I used to, because I'm so involved in my research work, which I prefer to do.
Okay. Mm-hmm. All right, very good. Well, if you need to email me, that's George at coasttocoastam.com. Our special guest tonight is, like I said, one that even Deepak Chopra has called the encyclopedia of the afterlife. In the moment that we take phone calls, you can restrict them, of course, to some of the things you're hearing tonight, because we're going to get into some pretty astounding things in just a moment. But some of you who might have had your own after-death experiences, afterlife experiences, check in with us, and you might want to share part of that as well, too. So stick with us. I'm George Norrie. This is Coast to Coast AM. We'll be right back with our special guest tonight, Mellen Thomas Benedict, right here on Coast to Coast AM. Mellen, you were dead. What brought you back? How did you come back?
Well, in my conversations with the light, one of the more interesting things I discovered and learned about was that reincarnation is for real. The light told me that almost everyone on Earth believes in reincarnation in some fashion or another, even Christians, Muslims.
Well, pretty high percent do, I'll tell you that.
And what I was shown was that that the spiritual explanations of reincarnation are actually very flimsy. But the physics, the quantum physics and the quantum mechanics of reincarnation are absolutely solid, and I give like a whole workshop on just that. What's beautiful about reincarnation is it's a very natural process. It's inevitable to our evolution, and it's inevitable to our spiritual evolution.
Okay, but in this case, though, you didn't reincarnate. You came back as you.
Yeah, I believed I was going to reincarnate into a new body, but actually I reincarnated into the same body, which at first was kind of a letdown because I had to pick up my sad life at the exact spot I'd left it off.
Well, and I was going to say, the process of rigor mortis was starting to set in. Oh, did that go away? What happened?
Yes, I as I was told by my caretaker, that after about an hour and a half, they had left me alone in the room and were actually discussing what to do next. And shortly thereafter, they heard a sound in the room, and they came into the room, and I was actually laying on the floor. I had fallen out of the bed. And as I remember, I thought I was going to be reincarnated, but I came back into my own body.
Was this your choice?
Yes. The actual specifics, I was not intelligent enough to design, but the fact that we all do come back, which is the beauty of it, we all do reincarnate, and we all are part of this great process of this conscious building that's coming to a crescendo or a critical mass here in the very near future. I was on the floor in the room whispering a prayer. Right before I came back, and I'd had all the time I ever wanted to with the light to ask questions and to be taken to different realms, and I just had every question I could ever possibly have was answered, and I literally am someone that has no questions now. I only have answers. But that doesn't mean I know everything by any means. Every one of us has our different set of questions for the universe that we're exploring and adding to the whole. So by no means do I know everything. I just know that all my questions were answered to my satisfaction, and then I was ready to come back. What I am humbled about, though, is that I was aware that there were many, many people who were much more better qualified than me, much better people than me, much more capable than me, that were not getting a second chance for whatever reason. That's between them and the light. But I was going to come back, and I knew it, and I thought I was going to be born conscious. But and I'm still humbled by that to this day, is that I was given a second chance. I chose a second chance, and I wanted to make the most of it this time. And I live with that thought every day.
Did you regret it for a little bit when you came back?
Well, certainly when I first came back, because I was right back in the same life again, in the same world. And it took a period of about 2 years of integration to really integrate being back in the world and having to take this life and use this life.
Why don't we all get that choice you got? And that was, they die, they don't come back. Why don't we get that choice?
I don't have an answer for that. That's something that's unique with each individual. But I can tell you this, though, that once you go to the light, you are completely purified of any disease, any darkness, any what you might call evilness. You are completely purified and begin your reincarnation again. There are 3 levels of reincarnation, as I was taught. One is the automatic survival of the species reincarnation. You could call it bloodline reincarnation. It's like it's more powerful than your mind. I know there's a lot of people that teach that the mind created everything, but I was shown on the other side that the mind is one of the last things that showed up. Your body is millions of years much older than your mind. And our mind is in such a young state at this time that it's like a child. You know, there's a certain time when children are so young, they think they're the center of the universe and they have no cares about anyone else.
Right.
We're still a little bit in that stage, sort of like, remember when Galileo tried to show the church that the Earth was not the center of the universe?
It got him in deep trouble.
And you look at most human religions, and I'm not putting down any of them, but most human religions on the planet have what I call have not had the Galileo effect yet. We're not actually the center of God's eye. We're a part of a whole beautiful system called the Gaia. and we're about to mature as a species, which is very important to the survival of the species and the planet.
Now, tell me your concept of the Gaia.
And this is something I never knew about before I went to the other side, but I was shown this in like these great, I guess you call them movies, but I was shown that what we call the Gaia Concept is that the whole Earth, and I guess the astronauts were some of the first to see this, although the ancients talked about it, is that the whole Earth is actually one living being. It's a fantastic life form, almost beyond our imagination.
Like an organism all by itself.
It really is, and we're all a part of this. The human part of it is absolutely an incredible, special part. Just every human alive today has worked their way up from primordial into being the top of the DNA chain. We have the top DNA on the planet. I know that may rub some people wrong, but we do. Our DNA is really the book of life on the planet. Every human being alive today has been everything this planet has been so far.
Maybe everything this universe has been, Mellen.
If you want to go to the galactic Gaia, yes, certainly. Everything from the Big Bang. Certainly. But on this particular planet, with the type of star that we have and the gravity and all of that, we are the sum total of everything that's happened on this planet, and a great creation. We're just learning now not to separate ourselves from nature or the planet. The ancients tried to tell us this, and I think we're just beginning to understand it now.
You know, let's talk a little bit more about reincarnation since you brought it up before we get into prophecy. We've had a number of guests on this program, Mellen, who are true believers in reincarnation. They past life people in hypnosis. We come up with incredible stories. Did you see, when you died, your past lives?
Yes, in fact, that was something that's going to be in my book that I'm going to have out pretty soon. Is I got not only a life review, but once I got to the light and we were discussing reincarnation, I got a review of my lives on this particular planet. And what's interesting is that people have not had as many reincarnations at this point as they think they've had, because and I became sort of a specialist in past life regression for many years after my near-death experience. I was trained, and I studied hypnosis, and I found it a very good tool to work with people. But there are three types of quote, past life experiences, or future, if you want to look into that too. One is an actual true past life. But we're covered, that's like a pearl in the center of an onion that you have to peel. So much of the stuff that we think is our story is really our family story, stories we picked up along the way. And the third part is the symbolic part of our life. We pick up symbolic, what we might call past life memories that we pick up from the books we read, from images we see, from emotional events we go through. And true past life regression is a process of peeling the onion to get down to the real you. And the real you has had fewer incarnations than you think at this time, because this whole experience has just begun. We're not even at a midpoint yet.
Do you believe past lives are this continual quest to reach perfection? We keep coming back until we get better, 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 and then you go to this heaven stage and you don't come back anymore.
Yeah, in my book I have a chapter called The Promise of Heaven, and really we are in heaven already. The concept of heaven as we know it is really relatively new. Most people don't understand that. The concept of heaven and hell is very new in human consciousness. It's almost a modern invention. And it was a way in the very dark times in which even the shamans couldn't see the ways out to promise us that you're not going to get your reward here, but if you work hard and if you're good, you'll get your reward someplace else called heaven, or many names for it. And that got us through a lot of our hard times. But for most of the planet now, it's not, that concept isn't working that well anymore.
And you know what? And quite honestly, I want to get the good times now. I think life is to be enjoyed at its fullest.
And you're going to have plenty of incarnations to come, and life just gets better. Life is, and this may rub some people the wrong way, and please forgive me for saying this, but honestly, right now today, life is better than it's ever been for the general population of the planet. And most people don't have a very good historical background of what humanity and the planet has already been through. We've been through the worst of it already. Yes, we have this Iraq thing going on, and God bless everybody that's caught up in that. But that is a blip on the screen to our history, and most of the extinctions that are ever going to happen have already happened. We're now winding into our what's called our manifest destiny, because we're not meant to stay here forever. We have to leave this planet at some time in the not too distant future.
The quest when someone dies is, of course, will we ever see them again? I keep thinking of the movie The Gladiator with Russell Crowe when his wife and kid were killed, and he wanted to go. I mean, he wanted to visit them, and one of the other arrested the gladiators said, captured gladiators said, "Not yet, not yet." So you do wait, but there's this quest, this feeling that when you lose a loved one, you want them, you want to go see them. Do we ever get that far?
Oh, yes, and it's not as hard as you think, actually. There are many, many ways to do it, and one of the things we've lost in our modern Western society is what the quote, more primitive societies or undeveloped societies have, and that is the rituals of honoring your ancestors, and that includes your pets, too. You certainly can visit any of your friends on the other side. You can visit pets. In fact, you can actually sync up with them very easily. And the interesting thing about that is, and I can't take too long tonight on this show because it's like a whole workshop, but what you're contacting on the other side is the impression they left in the holographic field. It's almost like when you die and go through the light and you have your life review, which is super important. Everybody's life review adds to the experience of everybody else's experience on the planet, almost like a mainframe computer.
Are other people who have died, other souls, let's say, are they looking at your life review too, or is it just you?
Very possibly. Psychics could peek in on it. Shamans could assist you with this. Okay. That is possible.
All right. So as you're getting all of this life review, this quest to see other souls, the people you love, the dearly departed, does anything ever go wrong? I mean, is there a system in place here where everything works the way it's supposed to, or have you ever come across some tragedy on the other side?
Not in that manner whatsoever, because what's interesting is that you've heard of the Chakra System?
Yeah.
What I learned on the other side about that is that depending on what star system you're from and your planetary system, you tend to have as many chakras as you have planets in your solar system. And I know they threw out Pluto, but Pluto still counts. So the humans really have 9 chakras. The 8th chakra is the Ultraviolet Chakra, and that's the chakra of purification. That happens when you finish your life review and you go to the light. You pass through what's called the 8th chakra, which is purification, because there's nothing in this world that you could ever do that will taint the oversoul, that will taint your soul. Nothing you will ever do. Not even Adolf Hitler was tainted once he went through the light, and and that's why you can't take it with you. And that's why the more you resist giving up what you might call darkness, the harder it is to get to the light. I know I was one of those. I was stuck to my darkness until I learned to forgive myself and forgive my life and love my life. In fact, I came back praying, I love my life, I love my life. And when my caretaker found me on the floor, I was talking in a low voice, and she said, "I put my ear to your lips, and you were saying, I love my life. I love my life."
Did you ever see the Robin Williams movie, What Dreams May Come?
No.
It's this quest to find his wife who had died, and he went to the other side. You have to see it because it was a very colorful vision of what it is over there. What did it look like to you?
I saw some clips of that when it was out, yeah.
Okay, what does the other side look like?
Well, it's totally individual. That's the unique thing about it. Depending on your background and your own images, I tell you this: human beings are very metaphorical beings, and so we tend to see things in metaphors. In my book, I have a chapter called the Rorschach Universe. You know what the Rorschach is? Mm-hmm. That's where they have the ink blots, and everybody can look at the same ink blots and get a different picture.
Yes.
And my book is called The Rorschach Universe, and that's each and every one of us can look at the exact same thing in this universe, and in fact, see something different in it, which is the beauty of it, actually, the absolute beauty of all this. So I was an artist, and so I tended to have poetic and artistic kind of images and movies playing. I would suggest that an engineer might have a little different images and metaphors, but we're very metaphorical beings, and we tend to see more in our metaphors than we do with our eyes. In fact, our eyes are seeing the truth, but our minds are converting all this into metaphors.
Well, I got to tell you, I don't look forward to the time, but it's sure nice to get a little feeling and impression of what we experience. In your opinion, Mellen, and of course you've been there, right before one closes one's eyes to die, and they know something's going to happen, how much time transpires? Not that time will matter at that point, but I mean, is it instant? Does it take time before you start to see the other side, that light, whatever it is?
It can be slightly different for different people, but once you're out of your body, you're out of time-space, and some people can take a long time to go to the light. It felt like it took forever for me to get to the light. Some people go immediately. But what's interesting is when I was looking at my body, this light was leaving my body, and many, many years later, I'm studying the field of biophotonics, and you've heard many people say that they see a light leave when the person dies.
Yes.
Well, that's proven now scientifically. When your cells start dying, they give up their biophotons, and you are emitting light until every single cell in your body has completely deteriorated. So you are giving off a light. You are giving off quanta material that goes into the subtle energy realm, which we call the other side.
We may have killed your website, Mellen, but hopefully, like you, it will come back.
I'll have to reincarnate it.
Prophecy. We're going to talk about that when we come back. Soulmates, lots of people are interested in that as well. And you also see earth changes. When you went to the other side, what did they tell you? I mean, is it, and again, with this hope for the future, I would assume that all these massive earth changes aren't going to be our undoing.
No. In fact, and forgive me for saying this may rub some people the wrong way, but basically the last 10,000 years have been absolutely paradise on Earth. It's been a very special time to be on Earth. You haven't seen Earth changes till you go back 100,000, a million years.
Good point.
What we're calling Earth changes right now are nothing.
Well, stay with us. Mellen Thomas Benedict, our special guest. We'll get into prophecy because he has some thoughts about the end of the world, which apparently it may not be. And then next hour, we'll open up the phone lines and give you an opportunity to chat with him as well. I'm George Norrie. We'll be back in a moment on Coast to Coast AM. Hey, pick up the After Dark newsletter. You'll get 14 great issues for the price of 12. Most current stories have to do with the afterlife, the grandfather's clock that stopped when the old man died, all kinds of things. So call 1-888-727-5505, or you can go online at coasttocoastam.com. And welcome back to Coast. George Norrie with you. Mellen Thomas Benedict, our guest. Prophecy. Tell us about some of the ancient prophecy, and do you see that occurring in our lifetime, Mellen?
Well, what's interesting is when I was with the light, I asked about religions and I asked about these prophecies because, I think it's almost impossible for anyone in the Western world to not come up hearing something about the end of the world at some point.
And we're talking end-time prophecy, right?
Right.
Okay.
And that's what they're all about, really. Most all the legitimate ancient prophecies are about the end of the world as we know it. And the first thing I was told and shown on the other side was sort of a history of the end of the world. How many times the prophecies of the end of the world have come and gone, and the only pattern is that the world is not ended and that humanity goes on. And in fact, when someone names an exact date of the end of the world or the end of a certain time, I would bet the house on that it's not going to happen. I was told on the other side that all the legitimate ancient prophecies will end in most of our lifetimes, and they all have to do with the end of the world. And we're going to finally get past that, this end of the world stuff, because the end of the world is what a very young mind, a very young, immature mind thinks about, because they can't see any way out, they can't see any hope, basically. And
is it a cop-out, Mellen?
Pardon me?
Is it a cop-out?
No, it's just that we haven't had enough experience up till just now to really see that the world is going to become a lot more stable and a lot more sustainable. And you've got to watch out for these self-fulfilling prophecies, because everyone that predicted these, it probably only happened to them.
Yeah, that could be. It's the end of the world, but it was for them, not us.
But so I've actually done a whole lecture called "The History of the End of the World," and it's amazing when you add up all the historical dates in which the world was going to end, and everybody believed it. The Bible is full of this. Nostradamus. There was the great disappointment with the Christians in the 1800s when they all believed the world was going to end and the rapture was going to happen. People gave up their jobs, sat on top of their houses. I mean, it's a great historical event, and the day came and went. And remember Y2K?
Oh, sure.
I mean, I know people that sold their homes and moved to survivalist communities over Y2K. 2012 is really an astronomical prediction, and it is the closing of a cycle of circling the galaxy.
And I think we might anticipate some solar mishaps. But I don't think it's going to kill us.
I'll get into that in a minute. We're going to have more and more of those because we are at some point going to have to leave the planet. But the last real legitimate ancient prophecy isn't that ancient. It's Isaac Newton's prophecy of he thought the world would end from all his calculations in 2060.
Right.
All the later stuff, the New Age stuff and all that, is just repeats of the past and reinterpretations. And some of these people have been repeating these prophecies for 100 more years. And, it's like, if I just keep saying the world's going to end, maybe one day it will.
Well, didn't every era think it was the end of the world for them?
Yeah. And in the earliest times in humanity, where we had far less survivability against nature itself, it was very threatening. We're living through things now an ancient society could not have lived through.
Okay, but what about the apocalypse? What about the Endtime Prophecy,
for example? All that's already happened. It happened right when they said it was going to happen.
All right.
It already happened, within 70 to 100 years. It happened right when they thought it was going to happen, and that ended up in the dispersia of the Jewish nation.
Do you believe this planet can sustain 6.5 billion people now, another 9 billion soon?
Absolutely. This planet could sustain even more than that. And what's beautiful, what I was shown is we're technically in a time now that's never happened before in history, and that is science, consciousness, and industry, what you might call the modern world. We're at a technical point right now where we can feed and comfort every human on Earth right now. But we have religion, politics, greed, and avarice, all the things that young children have. We're fighting over who has the biggest stack of cookies, and we're fighting over who has the oil and who has this, when it really belongs to all of us. And believe me, as a species matures, which is going to happen very rapidly now over the next 75 years, we're going to mature very rapidly now because we have to grow up. We're going to realize that excuse me, there's more than enough resources.
I thought we almost lost you again, Mellen.
I know. There's more than enough resources. In fact, I was shown that one of the problems is that we need more people on the planet now. We need more people on the planet now, and I know that kind of freaks some people out. But if you look back at the Gaia, in which we're all one living system,
yes,
there's not quite enough potential here right now. We have to hit critical mass. And believe me, this is not an insane system. The universe is self-organizing, and we're a product of a self-organizing universe. Already, in many foreign countries, from Japan to Germany to even Bangladesh, they're hitting zero population growth already. So we're going to hit an optimal density of population on the planet here very soon now. And that means we need more eyes, we need more ears, we need some more brains. I think that's obvious. We need some more brains, don't we?
Yes,
and
we do.
Need more hearts to come to this critical mass. And it's the critical mass that is really going to change everything. That's what I was shown on the other side, is the interpretation of the meek shall inherit the earth. It's more than about being rich. It's more than about having all the resources. One of the things I was shown is that there's always going to be what's called over-the-horizon technologies appearing, and this has been a pattern in human history. Humanity has been through such horrible times in the past, it's astounding. We are not going to go through times like that in the future, although some people seem like they want us to have great plagues on the planet and stuff. But we're in the best situation yet in history to deal with these sort of things. And I know people believe. When I hear people spouting off that, we're going to have diseases and plagues and stuff, and I say, do you really want to believe that? Because if you really believe it, you're going to manifest it. And thank God, most people on the planet have never heard of prophecies. Most people on the planet have never heard of these things and never will. It's not in a mass consciousness that's going to add up to anything.
Now, while you were talking about 2012, and we'll get into this now, you also just said something that we may leave the planet one time?
We have to leave the planet. This is something I saw on the other side that's absolutely tied to our manifest destiny. What's going to happen is there are three things that are beyond our control. And every star, every planet has a lifespan.
Mm-hmm.
By even the best estimates, the planet Earth has already expended about 90% of its life force. The planet's getting old. Right. The sun is getting old. There's a window here in which, and thank God that we've matured and evolved to this point at this incredible time. It's almost like a miracle. But what's going to happen is the sun is getting hotter. It's been measured very accurately for quite a while now. The sun is getting hotter. It's getting old. It's throwing temper tantrums, and that's going to continue. Secondly, we're losing the moon. We're losing the moon at about an inch a year.
Yeah, it is going away a little bit at a time.
And it's the only thing that keeps us stable. If we didn't have the moon, we wouldn't have seasons. I
wonder at what point, Mellen, it has to be before it creates instability.
We've got, the sun, they think, is going to last about 4 more billion years. But really, in that, there's only a little time where it's actually going to be right for us to be on the planet, because then it's going to get too hot. We can't be here for 4 billion more years. It isn't going to work that way.
No way.
Then the moon is wandering off, and the Earth is starting to wobble. That has a lot to do with what people call Earth changes right now, climate changes. The last time that happened was around 10,000 years ago, when the moon got just far enough away for us to shift only 1 degree, and the whole Sahara Desert started. That used to be a huge green area, and you see how it changed the planet. But the one thing that's going to get us before all that, the moon, we probably have.
So you're talking about these three things. Let's go through them.
The sun.
The sun.
The sun's getting old.
Sun getting old.
It's going to get hotter and hotter and throw more storms at us.
All right.
It's blowing off the ozone, even more than we're doing right now. The moon is wandering away, so we're starting to wobble a little bit. So it's the seasons and stuff are getting a little wacky. And then the third thing, which is really a planet killer, it's the thing we really have to worry about more than anything else. It's what got Mars. It's why Mars is the way it is today, is that our liquid metal magnetic core, which creates our electromagnetic field on the Earth, is cooling. And it's cooling faster than people.
And there's nothing we can do. Nothing we can do about it, is there?
No. And once the liquid metal core cools to a certain level, things happen very rapidly. You lose your electromagnetic field. The cosmic rays hit you. It blows off the atmosphere. All the water evaporates. And that'll happen, some predictions are, within the next 2,000 years.
Okay, you said we've got a hopeful future.
We do.
Is that include leaving the planet?
Yes,
or just...
it's our manifest destiny. And this is what's going to unite humanity. We are you've heard of Noah's Ark. We are the Ark of life. And what I saw was so beautiful that within the next 400 years, we are going to be star-seeding other planets. And the over-the-horizon technologies that no one sees coming, no one can predict. All the major technologies we know today was not predicted by any prophets or any psychics.
Do you think we were star-seeded?
I can tell you this: life did not start here, and it does not end here. Of course, we were star-seeded, but we weren't star-seeded so much as aliens coming here and bringing life. The true star seed is held in comets, and you can imagine the early Earth, and evidence seems to show that the minute the Earth had cooled down just enough, life began.
They taught you some pretty good science there, Mellen.
Well, I loved it, and And so you can imagine the Earth as an ovary and the comets as sperm. And when the two got together, life was created almost instantly.
Well, now, okay, if this is all occurring and you say we have to leave the planet, are you saying we may leave it in the form of seeding other planets and other systems?
No, our form
or are we going to have billions of people leave in spaceships and go someplace else?
It won't be spaceships, actually, because even traveling at the speed of light is too slow to do anything. There's already proof. Like I would recommend everybody check out Cleve Baxter's work.
Oh, he just was on the show.
Yeah, Cleve Baxter's work. Now, I was shown on the other side. I was some of the things I was shown on the side were things that I would be seeing again. And one thing I was shown is that this guy named Baxter had discovered something that was as important as anything ever discovered on planet Earth, as Newton, as Einstein. This thing that Cleve Baxter discovered, which is called primary perception,
yes,
and his website's primaryperception.com, is one of the most important discoveries of all human history, and yet he probably won't be known about it in his life that well. But he's living on the planet right now. He's in San Diego, and in the future, he is considered a saint. Check out his work.
I love that. Well, he's been on the show, as I said, many times.
He's the first to really start proving in elegant experiments that there is something faster than light. It's instantaneous, no time lag.
Okay, but how are we going to leave? I mean, physically, we're not going, right?
What happens. There's going to be these things that come around the corner that we don't even expect, that no one can predict, and this has been a pattern in human history.
You mean these three you mentioned, or something else?
No, new technologies and new ways of doing things.
All right.
On the other side, I was shown this thing about Jules Verne, the guy that invented science fiction.
Yeah, what did you see about him?
Well, they kind of educated me. They showed me that when Jules Verne wrote this stuff, he just made it up. He was sheer fantasy. There was no even supporting technologies to build any of the things he was writing about.
I think somebody gave him some help.
Well, whether that's true or not, all the kids that read those books invented everything in those books and more.
That's true.
And I was shown also that Star Trek is the planetary Jules Verne's for the planet. Everything you see on the Star Trek series, not the Richard Shatner stuff, but from, Picard on. And I was not a Star Trek fan until I had my near-death experience. Oh. But everything you see on Star Trek, our children are inventing right now.
Are you saying we're going to be beamed aboard other planets?
Oh, yeah, something very similar to that.
Okay.
But beyond the speed of light instantaneously.
Man, I hope if we get beamed aboard, we end up being on the planet that's pretty hospitable.
Well, it looks like, they're discovering dozens and dozens of planets every month now, and we're getting very good. And with the new observatory stations that are a million miles out in space now, we'll actually be able to tell through the gases on the planet if there's life there, and pretty much what kind of life. It turns out that there are, they say there's more stars in the universe than there are grains of sand on every beach on Earth.
Always have heard
that. Well, there's even more planets than that. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
So there's plenty of places out there, but what happens is, as we mature, within a couple of 100 years, maybe a little sooner, we start actually having true contact, not mysterious, fuzzy pictures and all that. And what we learn from these other civilizations speeds us along so quickly. It's astounding what comes to us.
This is,
and we will take all of life. Like I said, we're like the Noah's Ark. We will take all of life on Earth with us.
When could this happen?
Well, in cosmic time, it's the blinking of an eye, and this certainly will start happening within the next 400 years.
Okay. Well, and I've heard from some other prophets and psychics that we've got at least that long. So your belief then is the future is bright this way. Eventually, though, the planet's going to die.
It will eventually. There'll be a great period, though, once we start star seeding that's phenomenal. You remember all the wagons going out west, those wagon trains? The star seeding, going to new worlds, is going to be a fantastic period of human history. But the Earth itself will become more like a natural park. It'll be like Mecca. It'll be like the place you want to visit one time in your lifetime. You want to visit the mother planet.
Unfortunately, some of you will have turned the lights off. 2012, take a few moments again. Let's go back a little bit. You see this as a celestial event. Could it be a catastrophic celestial event?
No, not at all. No.
Won't happen.
No.
Well, that's good. You don't think the sun's going to heat up and send some eruptions?
Can I read something to you, a little poem I wrote about this?
Yeah, please, go ahead. Yep.
It's about prophecy and ascension, because I get hundreds of emails about this. I wrote this for the newsletter.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. Because I keep asking how this affects our ascension, and it kind of all came together. And here it goes. It's not very long. Our ascension, as I learned on the other side, from the Gaia perspective, is a very natural evolution of dense being into more subtle being. Already at the quantum level, the human body is so very subtle. No two atoms even touch. We are more spirit than flesh, always have been, always will be. There is no beginning or end to our journey. Life did not begin here. Life does not end here. The distance from the outside of an atom to the inside of an atom is huge in scale with the rest of the cosmos Godhead. The journey from the outside to the inside, from the inside to the outside, from anywhere to here is an impossible journey that happens every day in everything, everywhere. The journey is not linear or time restricted. Dive in when and where you choose. 2012, 2060, why wait? The end of time-space illusion is near. How near? Is now a good time? The past, present, and future come together in the great now. There have always been Lemurians, Atlanteans, the Dreamtimers. Lemuria is now. Atlantis is now. We are all here together right now. The next epoch of consciousness and history is the now. In reality, there never was a past. There is no future. Listen to your teachers. It is always now. It always was now. It always will be now. The only time you have is now. The ever-expanding now. Is the universe expanding, or is our consciousness expanding? Who is to say, if not you? There is no other self but the self. Inner, outer, you, me, them. There is no self but the self. Micro, macro, mumbo, jumbo. Let the infant intellect split hairs to infinity, and you still end up here and now.
Could you have written that if you didn't have that experience, that death experience?
Probably not. I was pretty ignorant.
All right, stay with us. And by the way, it's I think you said Richard Shatner. It's William Shatner from Star Trek.
Okay, yeah.
See, you really weren't a Star Trek fan.
I know.
You're telling the truth. We'll be back in a moment. We'll take phone calls. We'll talk about soulmates, too, with Mellen Thomas Benedict. Let's get Mellen's take on soulmates when we come back, and then we'll take your phone calls for this hour on Coast to Coast AM. Hey, Mellen, before we take the calls, the many calls for you, let's get your take on soulmates. And also another question. So many people are emailing me. I don't know why, but this one question. They want to know your take on attempted suicides or suicides for people on the other side. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's a very deep subject to be talking about. But basically, we cannot take life and we cannot give life. That's a universal given. The thing is, with suicide, you're not really getting away from anything. I guess the way I died was a form of suicide. It just took a lot longer.
Yeah, well, that's a good point.
If you try to commit suicide, you will always reincarnate at the moment you left off in the very similar situation. So the thing you can do is to forgive and forget and to make peace with your life and to love your life no matter what condition, no matter where you are, because suicide is only a minuscule temporary break from what you might call your karma. And I know people have had reported hellish experience from suicides, and that's very apropos, considering the mental state they die in, or say people doing drug overdoses. It makes it kind of a crazy experience. But once no matter how you've died, once you go to the light, you are purified completely. It doesn't mean that you can't skip grades, though. You can't go any farther than you've learned to go. So in the future, we're going to have ethical suicides. Dr. Kevorkian is only the very beginnings of
he's the
tip.
tip.
Going to become very humane. And what we need is conscious deathing on the planet, and we need conscious birthing.
I think, like you do, that we'll get there.
Yeah, we will. And I foresaw on the other side that California will actually be one of the leaders in deathing and birthing centers in the future.
Interesting. Soulmates, what's your take on that?
When it comes to soulmates, and of course I learned this on the other side, you actually don't have any soulmate outside yourself, your male and female nature, your triune being. Or some people might say me, myself, and I. The only soulmate you will ever truly know is yourself, and you should explore that and have a love affair with yourself. Literally, we're always looking for it outside of ourselves. Now, outside of ourselves, what we have is we have life mates and playmates.
Life mates and playmates.
Yeah, we have life mates. Those are people we decide to marry and have children with and spend our lives with. And then we have playmates. Those are people we just spend part of our lives with.
Who could be friends?
Friends, too. But the only true soulmate you really have, and which we're just beginning to explore, is the dynamic being of yourself. And we should have a great love affair going with ourself. That doesn't make you selfish. It makes you an incredible lover of humanity. And believe me, people that truly respect themselves and love themselves are highly attractive to everyone else.
Do you believe in reincarnation? People who may have been soulmates or may be soulmates continue to see each other and interact?
Oh, sure.
In all these lives?
We tend to repeat patterns. We're very pattern-oriented beings because the universe is very pattern-oriented. It's not unlikely that people will come back and meet each other. The trick with that is, though, timing can be off. You can get the timing off a little bit, and you'd be an old person, and the other person you might call your soulmate is a child.
All right, let's go to the phones. You ready?
Okay.
Many callers here for you. West of the Rockies, it's your turn. You're on Coast to Coast. Hi there.
Hi, George. It's a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you, sir.
I have a question for your guest.
Uh-huh.
Have you ever approached the light for any information about UFOs?
I really don't put my focus on UFOs. The universe is certainly full of life. The life that we can relate to is actually fairly rare, but understand this in the numbers. There may be only 1 in 1 billion planets out there that have life form that we can actually relate to, but in the great number, that actually ends up being a pretty big number.
Absolutely. And you believe they're doing, perhaps those who have evolved, they're seeding throughout the universe as well?
Yes, there's many forms of star seeding life throughout the universe. Many forms.
First-time caller line, you're up with us on Coast to Coast. Hi there.
George?
It sure is.
Hey, it's Vicki in
Hi, Vicki.
Little Rock, Arkansas.
Hey, Vicki. Thanks for calling.
Yes. Great show, as always. And it was ironic that you just brought up some topics that really tie into one of the things I want to talk about. It seems a little selfish because I am one of these people that have one of these, what we call the New Age illnesses. It depends which doctor you talk to,
okay,
what they call it. Chronic fatigue syndrome, fibromyalgia, delirium, and on it goes. And, you know, he was talking about, we were talking about plagues and such earlier, and then you brought up the suicide. I'm thinking, you know, the number one killer of these illnesses is suicide because they're so misunderstood. One lady said she had cancer, and it was a breeze compared to her chronic fatigue syndrome because people don't believe that, you know, the general population don't believe that these illnesses exist, and it is they're epidemic. I used to be a nurse and had to quit nursing, and I really got in there and fought, you know, let's educate the public and the doctors, and then I start reading things about mycoplasma, you know, and biological warfare, and honestly, I got so depressed, I just kind of started giving up. And, you know, I'm tired of being on medications. I want to be healthy. What is going on with this? We've been called the canaries in the coal mine, you know. And I'm sure, as many theories as there are out there, doctors, that there are people that do fit into those categories. But, you know, they try to put everybody into those. And are our bodies trying to adjust to this new energy. That's the sort of the new age.
Well, Mellen, it's not cancer, but it's an affliction, and it does affect a lot of people.
Oh, it sure does. It's in the same category with Lyme's disease also. It doesn't kill you, but it steals your life. And then many people lose their jobs. They don't even get benefits. Insurance companies won't recognize it, although many more are now. But I've worked on some research projects in this area, and what I tend to believe is that there's the new diseases are really what you would call energy system diseases, in which the final end result is your mitochondria DNA is impairing your ATP production. In other words, the engine in every cell is breaking down. And that comes from xenotoxins, mostly around your house or your office place, and electromagnetic pollution. And it will just wear you down over the years, and finally you'll hit critical mass.
Can you fight this?
Yes. It's very, very important to keep your bedroom as clean as possible and to keep as many electronic devices out of your bedroom as possible. Certainly don't have electric clocks near your head. You can have battery-operated.
And phones, too, right? Wireless phones by your head.
AC adapters, all this kind of stuff we put in our bedrooms is detrimental to our health. Also, a lot of people don't realize that, and I've seen great research videos on particulates. In other words, if you've got to keep your bed clean and your pillow clean, because you are breathing deep at night, and I've got videos that will show you what you're breathing in and out of your body all night long. That's why a canopy over the bed is very smart, or if you have a queen-size bed, have a king-size sheet that just uses a dust cover. Keep your bed, keep your pillow extremely clean. Change them twice a week if you can. You can't imagine the effect that has on you and your pets.
It is. In simple things that you don't think about. It's
the simple things that are getting us, really. The electromagnetic pollution on the planet, of course, is enormous now. And, of course, with the advent of cell phones, we believe that's even affecting the bee population.
Well, now they're thinking of going to eventually wireless electronics in your house, where you don't plug it into the wall anymore, the socket.
I know. And there needs to be a lot more research from what I've seen on the effect this is going to have both on consciousness and biology.
Let's go next to our international line. Where are you calling from? Hello there.
Good to talk to you guys.
Good. And where are you?
I'm in Vancouver, British Columbia.
Go ahead, sir.
Hey, I didn't catch the beginning of your show there with the guest, and I just kind of want to pick his brain on sort of his thoughts on sort of the beginning of it all, and whether he's a sort of believer in the creationist theory or the Big Bang. The Big Bang Theory, and to me, the Big Bang Theory doesn't hold water because, to me, what's strange about the Big Bang Theory is that if there was a giant explosion at some point millions of billions of years ago, how do all the planets end up in a round shape? If there was an explosion, you wouldn't have these uniform-shaped planets, and I just like to pick his brain and find out what he thinks from the beginning, where we came from.
Oh gosh, that's just too big. That gets to be a philosophical argument at this point because nobody can prove. Both sides can't prove it at this point. What seems to make sense to one person doesn't make sense to the next, and so it would just be a circular conversation. I wish I could help you on that, but it's just one of those subjects that goes around and around in circles.
I understand that there's no real answer to this, and you don't have the answers. I'm not looking for you to have the answer. I'm just more just thought what your gut feeling is and what your thoughts are. Just because I like to debate this one because it is a roundabout conversation.
What jump started us, Mellen?
Well, what's interesting is, and I think many gurus and people that do contact higher self and higher realms. What's interesting, and I've thoroughly examined this over the years, believe me, as many times I've been to the light, forgive me for saying this, but I don't think even God knows where all this came from. It's really like it becomes phantomless. I don't think we have enough synapse in our heads to even understand it at this point.
Wait a minute. One of the Beach Boys songs starts by saying, God only knows.
I wish.
Wild Card Line, you're up with us on Coast to Coast. Hello there.
Hello.
Yeah, hi. Take it away.
Oh, yeah. I just had a question for your guest.
Sure.
Couple quick, actually. You mentioned earlier on, I think at least you did, that your personal beliefs affect the experiences you have when you pass on.
Yes.
Yeah. Could your personal beliefs have affected your experiences, like with your answers?
Well, what's interesting about I think about my case is that I really had no real preconceived notions. In fact, every time I was shown something, I asked to see behind it, to see beyond the metaphor. And so I was actually given answers that explained metaphors to me and what I was seeing. I asked to see almost like behind the wizard's, in the Wizard of Oz, the Great Curtain. I kept asking to see behind the curtain. And I was given answers that satisfied me in my inner knowing to my complete satisfaction.
I have a quick question about my dad's near-death experience, if that's all right.
Sure, go ahead.
He tried to explain it to me as best he could, but his heart he had zero blood pressure, whatever, but he said he was trying to fight to stay above the clouds. I don't know, does that make any sense to you?
Say that again?
He was fighting to stay above the clouds.
That's a quite common vision or metaphor. Not only dying people have, but many creative people. Even Beethoven would raise his head above the clouds and then get his inspiration. I think it's a very beautiful metaphor for getting to the higher realms or the other side. It's a very beautiful metaphor.
Oh, okay, because you hear about the light. I just never heard about the clouds before, Yeah,
it's not unusual.
Oh, okay.
It's very beautiful, yeah.
I guess that was it. Thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you. Let's go to our next wild card line. You're on the air with us. Hi there.
Hi. Is this me?
If you are who you are, it's all you.
Can you prove it?
Hi, George. It's nice to talk to you again. This is Debbie from Austin,
Okay,
Texas.
Debbie, sure.
And I'm really excited and honored to talk to Mr. Benedict. My questions have been evolving as I've been listening, but I've been studying the near-death experience for 18 years since I lost my daughter and my ex-husband within 7 months apart of each other in tragic accidents. And I've been blessed to be able to talk to people like Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, and I had a reading with a friend with George Anderson who'd also lost a child. But still, I can't seem to shake the negativity from how this has affected my life, and to find the true purpose or meaning of, my purpose, why I'm here, and why does this all happen. And I guess I'm really envious of him and wondering if he has any answers for, if we do have fate or things that happen to us for a reason, and also how we can contact the light without dying.
Okay. It's very. I would recommend contacting the light without dying. In the old days, I had to do everything the hard way. But basically, I think many of us contact the light in one form or another in our dreams. I would encourage you to focus on having these kind of dreams when you go to sleep. It's when we're sleeping, we become multidimensional beings. We already are in body, but when we're sleeping, we kind of have the ability to leave our body and become multidimensional. And it was in that, and in light states of hypnosis, I think you could actually learn to go to the light yourself.
I've been really lucky to be able to contact my daughter and ex-husband when I've been dreaming.
In dream states. Well,
yeah. Dreams are reality. They're a fascinating form of reality, and it's one of the special parts of being human is to have dreams, and I would suggest that you get a book or learn about lucid dreaming, because then you're fully conscious in your dreams, and you can do so much more. It's really an astounding thing to learn about.
Well, as you've done, changing your own life scenario, which is a pretty darn good gift, Mellen.
Yeah. And remember, life is completely interactive, and so is death. Death is just as interactive as life, and the dream state is the in-between that lets us go between the worlds, and it's a fascinating realm to explore.
With what you went through, the terminal cancer, the dying, the coming back, I take it you don't relish having to do this again.
No, I wouldn't want to do it that way again. I have no preconceived notion on how long I'm going to be here this time. I don't like to, have any of those preconceived notions. I do know this, though, that when I do die, on my tombstone, I'm going to have a little. It's going to be inscribed on it saying, "Leave a message. I'll be right back."
I like that. Well, we will be right back to Mellen in just a moment on Coast to Coast. Is your website up and running now? I know we slaughtered it earlier.
Oh, I hope so. I haven't checked.
Okay. I mean, those servers sometimes just take, you get millions of hits all at one time. It's tough.
Yeah.
Even in the afterlife, it's tough. Is there color, by the way, in the afterlife?
Yes. There's color, and there sometimes even smells.
Really? I mean, a lot of people will smell like grandma's perfume when she's passed on. You mean smells like that?
Oddly enough, yes, and certainly there's color.
All right.
Color like you've never seen. Colors you've never seen, in fact.
Vivid.
Yeah.
Bright. All right. Well, stay with us. We're going to continue with phone calls. It'll be our final moment as things roll along here at coasttocoastam.com. Fast Blast, by the way, is up. Those of you who have never done this before, it's a free service for you. You just go to the coasttocoastam.com website 15 minutes before the program starts and just click by the eyes of Sigmund Freud on the left-hand side, and you can send us instant messages while we're on the air. We'll be back. Hey, on our Monday program, John Rhodes joins us, Reptoids. He's a crypto hunter and a darn good one. Some of the things he'll be talking about how about tube shuttle system technology, 14,000 miles per hour underground? That's just one of the things we'll talk with John Rhodes about on our next Coast to Coast show. And welcome back to Coast. Mellen Thomas Benedict, our guest. We'll go to some final calls here. Let's pick it up by going to our East of the Rockies line. You're on the air with us. Hi there.
Good morning. This is Ted from Detroit.
Hey, Ted.
Excellent show as usual, George. Very enlightening and informative on your part, Mr. Benedict.
Thank you.
You had mentioned earlier that the eyes see reality and the mind perceives it as a metaphor. I was wondering what the reality is behind the metaphor that we perceive as ghosts or aliens or angels.
Wow, that's a big one right there. Some of it is real, most of it is not. We're projecting these metaphors outside of ourselves, and to sort that out, you almost have to go case by case with individuals or particular cases. Which I find fascinating if you've got the time to do that. But we're very powerful beings, even though we're the youngest species on the planet. In fact, we're the last species on planet Earth. We're very powerful beings, and we can project on other people. We can project our feelings, our nightmares, our dreams, our angels outside of ourselves, just as well as a movie projector almost, and we're constantly projecting our inner visions into the world around us. So you'd almost have to go case by case. What's interesting is that we create angels all the time when we pray, when we ask for help. Our thought forms organize energy in the quantum state, and there's quanta. Your thoughts are quanta; they're actually real. It's real stuff. But what's interesting is so many humans have created so many angels in their prayers and so many helpers, but the minute the crisis passed, we abandon our angels, we abandon our helpers. So there's an awful lot of these, what you might call angels and helpers, looking for work.
Wow. Well, it's very interesting that much of what you're saying really ties into a lot of what's considered Buddhist philosophy. And quantum mechanics seems to be, the quantum theory seems to be bearing a lot of that reality out.
Yes, you know what's interesting about quantum physics is it's getting quite metaphysical, and quantum mechanics is even more metaphysical.
Hey, in the movie Poltergeist, Zelda Rubinstein, who played the part of Tangina, she's the one who went, "Go into the light, go into the..." And then she screams, "Don't go into the light, don't go into the light." She said it was a trick. Mm-hmm. How do we know when we pass on where we're really headed, Mellen?
Well, I tell you, the evidence we have, which is quite enormous, is that listen to most of the near-deathers, what they tell you. It's a very safe light to go to. We're not being tricked. There's always the kind of paranoid group, and believe me, the club of paranoia is a very rich and juicy club to belong to.
Yeah.
But basically, you're incredibly safe. And I was in one of my visits to the other side, I asked about this phenomenon, and I was told that the near-death experience, being so big on the planet, is going to help us in our evolutionary process, because one of the next things we have to do is we have to transcend survival together, and we have to transcend the fear of death. And once you do that, you cannot be controlled. You will go into what's called self-realization. And it's the only government that's ever going to work on the planet is self-government.
So you don't want to check out again, at least not for a long time.
Soon,
You're not afraid of it, though, are you?
No, I'm not afraid of it, and I know I'll be right back. One of my big goals in this life, and I like to teach workshops about this, is how to prepare for your next life. You know, the Egyptians were very good at that.
Yes, and the Tibetans, too, right?
We should put some thought and time into this. What life do I want to live next? Where do I want to be? And actually consciously interface with the experience.
Wildcard Line, you're up with us on Coast to Coast. Thanks for holding.
No problem. Is this George?
It sure is.
Oh, it's so nice to speak with you. I've been listening since 1993, my first time call here, and thank you very much, Mr. Benedict. I've had very similar experiences. This is Renee from Maui, by the way.
Okay.
I just, first of all, want to thank you so much for your positive, incredible positive attitude. What you've come out and seeing this is really changing a lot of experiences in this way, and a lot of my experiences have very much coincided with yours. I do have two questions here. The last caller, it sounded like it was too big for you. A brief background for me here. In childbirth, I had died for over, they said 10 minutes, but who was watching the clock? And what I had understood when you were talking about these geometric shapes, the mandala is what I used when I tried to gain attention to the physicians there on the heart monitor to tell them that I wanted to come back. I also am a breast cancer survivor, not genetic, but I gained some incredible knowledge from a doctor that I understand that you know of. When I heard your name, Dr. Prasad, he insisted I also did acupuncture, acupressure, past life regression, and lucid dreaming has become a part of my life.
Great.
So what I gained by this, it was very fascinating because I did not know that I had the cancer. It was found by somebody else. And denial, I felt, was a big part of my healing. It was an FDA non-approved drug at the time. But what I learned from past life review was that our heaven and our hell, I mean, my children and I myself have studied many religions, but our hell really was this past life review. I mean, I went very quickly through what I had, you know, the goodness that I had done for everyone, but also not having the knowledge and hurting others. I was put in their shoes and made to feel their pain, which allowed me to come out of this with being very humble and forgiving and being compassionate and kind, which I was not in that place at the time. That past life review is so important. And you are talking about this manifest destiny. I also learned that, you know, your thoughts really are so powerful, and if you allow them to be spoken, you know, it's like this ignition on a car. I looked at it, this analogy, and it really means so much. I appreciate you saying this manifest destiny. I can't wait to get on your and read more about you. My bottom line here, my two questions. I had one here.
How about just one question, okay?
Yes,
Go ahead.
Oh, okay. All right.
Quickly.
All right, I have problems now. Because I have this life after death experience, many people around me do not understand the sense of indestructibility that I have. Yet I'm a normal person, but you come out a little crazy. How did you deal with that when you came out? Did your relatives understand this? Did your family, friends? How did you deal with that?
No, actually, until I met Phyllis Atwater, I didn't understand that I'd gone through a very typical near-death experience as far as the coming back. It's very typical with near-deathers when they come back. Their priorities have shifted, their love boundaries are expanded, and the first people you try to explain this are your best friends and your family, and they're the ones that kind of reject you. So you become alienated for a while. Also, let's keep in mind that the near-death experience can make you dysfunctional for a while, and many recover from that, some don't. Many spend all their time wanting to get back to the light, and I don't know why they can't. They should be able to. But yes, for the first 2 years after my near-death experience, I was quite antisocial because I was super sensitive. I could hear everybody's thoughts, and I could hear their emotions. Our emotions have voices, but they're more like animal voices. And so if I'd go to a party and a beautiful woman would enter the room, you could hear all the males going,
grunt.
And I could hear people's suicidal thoughts, and believe me, that was very disturbing. And I ended up being quite antisocial and staying home. And eventually, after about 2 years, it kind of settled down to where I could go out and be with people again. But still, I can be in an airport and I can look around and I'll hear what someone's thinking or hear their emotions, and I know what the sound of these different emotions mean. And I have great empathy for people now. It's very true what you said. And part of the life review is that you not only review your life, you're put in the other people's shoes. And that is the only judgment you're ever going to get, that self-judgment, which is total and complete. And whenever I'm in traffic and somebody cuts me off or there's somebody in front of me, I actually take a look and I say, oh, that's an old person.
You're not a road rager then, are you?
Not
anymore.
My death experience, but I have compassion, and I look, well, that's an old lady in front of me. I'm going to beat the horn and freak her out even more, you know? You do end up with a lot more compassion because you've walked in the other person's moccasins.
Interesting. Let's go to our first-time caller line. Hello there. You're up.
Yes, George, wonderful show. I love it. And Mr. Benedict, this is fantastic. I'm enjoying every minute of it.
Thank you.
And yes, thank you. And James from San Antonio, Texas. I have a question about divination. I have been reading tarot and I Ching, and also doing some of the more, I guess, if you can call them more concrete tools such as astrology and numerology for about 17 years. And I've honed and developed my skills quite a bit, and I'm fairly intuitive. My question was, when you went to the other side, did you get any insight about how this whole dynamic works, whether I'm creating some reality here, or if I'm really kind of glimpsing forward and seeing some of the dynamics that are going on? I've predicted down to the exact month and day that certain events will happen with friends of mine and with my family and whatnot. Startling accuracy. That's my main question. If you have a chance at the end, I was also wondering about ghosts and what they are, if they're just people that are holding on and not wanting to fully pass over. So thank you very much.
Okay, on the first question, what's interesting is in divination, what looks like a deja vu or a prediction is, and this is something would take maybe another show to get into, but what's interesting is the life that you're living now, you have lived before, and you will live many times again in the quantum field. You and I and all of us have probably had this conversation a million times already. And as you become more conscious, you get glimpses into this. And so sometimes this is, I think, can really explain certain forms of precognition. Believe me, everything that's ever happened has happened and it's happening now, in the great moment of now. The past, the present, the future become the now. And when our consciousness expands to get this, time stops as we know it. So precognition is almost like a deja vu in many cases. And many people will start having more memories now. When things look familiar to you, we've been here before. We really have been here before. We've had this conversation before. It's very natural.
God, I'd hate to hear conversations like you picked up from people, though.
I tell you.
Nerve-wracking.
I had to get, like, psychic earplugs.
West of the Rockies, your turn. You're on the air with us. Hi there.
Hello, George.
Hey.
This is Troy calling from Layton, Utah.
I hope you're not close to those fires, Troy.
No, I'm sitting right in Hill Air Force Base.
Okay.
Base housing
Really?
here at the military.
Okay.
What I want to ask your guest, Mr. Benedict, is that this is very disturbing for me because I had my near-death experience, and it was unlike anything that anybody's ever said. I didn't go to the light. There was no light. There was no tunnels. There was no nothing. When I died of my heart attack, I went out of my body. I watched them work on me, and I was consciously knowing that I was dying. There was just no two ways about it. And so at that point, I realized there was nothing I could do about it. So what was the first thing I would do? I went and I looked for my spirit guide. Either my father or my grandparents or whoever has passed on before me. Nobody around. And I literally walked out of the room in the hospital into the lobby area looking for a spirit guide. Nothing to be found. And the interesting thing about it is that I must have been on a different plane because the place was absolutely empty. I mean, I was in the place in time, but there was nobody there. It was just like a completely empty building.
Sure.
There was nothing there. So what is going on? I mean, I've had people tell me, it just wasn't your time, but I don't know if that's an
Well, what you were experiencing is what has been called before the being in limbo, in the limbo state.
Mm-hmm.
There is that middle ground there, and you're one of the people that spent time in that middle ground. There is that middle ground there where there seems to be nothing, and that's all I can tell you. There is a middle boundary layer there, and you were in that layer, and you didn't go any farther, but you did come back. Now, had you died, you would have gone farther, but you lived. And you were brought back into your body. But you were experiencing what people call the middle state or the limbo state.
Which is a pretty awkward position to be in, isn't it?
Yes, it is. It really is.
Wildcard Line, you're up with us on Coast to Coast. Hi there.
Hi, George. It's nice to talk to you.
Thanks.
And Mellen, I really appreciate you giving me this chance to ask this question. Years ago, when I was a teenager, I was coming home from a date, and on my way home, I was just overcome with this. It was like knowledge. I just knew that someone was waiting for me, lying in wait for me. And when I came back to my house, I kind of reversed my routine, and I stood outside under a streetlight, and I called to the person. I had no idea for sure he was there, but I knew in my mind, I knew psychically someone was there, and I called out into the shadows and said that I know that you're there. And this guy actually ran off, and I called the police, and the police caught him wandering the neighborhood. So it's completely documentable. It absolutely happened.
Sure.
And I have wondered all these years, what caused that to happen? Was it spiritual? Was it me warning myself somehow? Was it God or the universe?
Well, it's one of the most natural things in the world. It turns out that our upper brains are not psychic at all. The only psychic ability we have is in our first brain, our lower brain. And everything, ask Cleve Baxter, is psychic. Plants, insects, bacteria. What we call psychic ability now is the most primitive survival instinct that we know, being able to sense outside of ourselves danger. This is how shamans talk to plants. So you were experiencing a very natural survival mechanism that's built in all of us if we'll pay attention to it.
Yeah, if it kicks in. It kicks in. And it all depends on what kind of, I guess, stress and pressure you might be under, Mellen, before it does kick in.
Yeah, there were many people that were in Vietnam, in the jungles where you couldn't tell where the enemy was, that developed their techniques, and they could sense where the enemy was, and they were very accurate.
Very fascinating. Mellen, we are out of time. I want to keep in touch with you, my friend, all right?
Okay, Well, I really appreciate the opportunity to join with everybody here. And I wish blessings to everybody everywhere.
I'm glad you came back.
Me too.
Mellen-Thomas.com is his website. Don't forget, as we pick up the program on Monday, John Rhodes, an expert in cryptozoology, will be our very special guest. For Karis Coburn, Steve Carr, Dan Galanti, Tom Dan Heiser, Gina Salvati, Lisa Lyon, Lex Lonehood, Sean Ladashore, Ross Mitchell, Alan Corbett, Stephanie Smithy, and Pundit and Art Bell. I'm George Norrie. Somewhere out there on Coast to Coast AM. We'll see you on our next edition. Until then, be safe, everyone.